Thanks for tuning into the Urban School Podcast. We have more hip hop news, hatred hip hop news, I should say. Elliot Wilson appeared on the new Rory and Mal show, and he talked about his dislike or his disdain for the new culture as far as journalism goes. Now he stated these same sentiments sort of on the Joe Budden podcast before. But he went into more detail and he actually said names. He put addresses on his dislikes this time, and got kind of messy as far as just kind of like being that old figure who doesn't want to see evolution and doesn't want to see the game change. But the game changes, and that's the name of the game. So just give a little background on Elliot Wilson. He is he's considered a journalist. His record goes all the way back to 1992. He's a CEO of Rap Radar right now. He was editor-in-chief for Double XL back in the day. And he made his name from like interviewing Drake and Jay-Z, and it's very difficult to get interviews from those guys. So he got a lot of popularity and a lot of accreditation for that. Being able to pull those interviews is very difficult because those guys really don't talk to everybody. Drake just started talking to more people recently. But like I said, the finer interviews are very rare. Sort of like Future. Future doesn't do a lot of interviews. The only interview I really watched was the Breakfast Club interview that he had. And I haven't really seen an interview since then. He just puts out the music and there you are. And that is what is Elliot Wilson's gripe is about these artists are putting out these projects that everyone likes, but they don't hear from the artists. And Elliot Wilson, you could take it with a grain of salt because he interviews people. So it's not like he has something to benefit. So it's not like he has anything benefit or anything to lose. All of this comes from hatred, and it comes from just just envy. Because like I said, he's not getting these interviews from these guys. And I think at this point in the game, he feels entitled to these interviews because he said, hey, I interviewed Jay-Z and I interviewed Drake. So he kind of feels entitled to those interviews. But what he doesn't realize is what I covered before is most of these artists now don't talk as much because their words get twisted. There's a lot of cancel culture now. There's a lot of, it's just a lot of scrutiny around everything that you say. So sometimes, like your grandma used to tell you, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And that's what a lot of these artists are going by. When you think about it, there's not a lot of artists who do interviews. And when they do, it's mostly like R&B artists in the hip hop culture, so to speak. There's not a lot of rappers coming out doing interviews. And like I said, when they do, it's short interview and it's very controlled. They say you can't ask this question, you can't ask this. Breakfast Club is a big component of kind of exploiting that. They'll say, well, we couldn't ask them this, we couldn't ask them that. And they're kind of limited on what they can say. And who wants to interview like that with so many boundaries? So Elliot Wilson knows this stuff. And because, like I said, he's been in the game since 1992. Most of the rappers now wasn't born in 1992. So they don't know who Elliot Wilson, is. And a lot of people who cover hip hop don't know the origins of hip hop. They just know hip hop today. They don't know, a Kool Mo D or LL Cool J or Big Daddy Kane, people like that. They only know what they know, right? So for them to know Elliot Wilson, he has to reinvent himself. He has to evolve. I always say this. Evolution is the name of the game. If you're able to transition, back in the days, if you had pager companies, but you didn't transition to cell phones, you were out of business. You became obsolete. If you sold VCRs, cassettes, but you didn't transfer to digital and you didn't transfer to, if you had VCRs and you didn't transition to DVDs and you didn't transition to digital, you became obsolete. You have to change with the times. And it seems like Elliot Wilson doesn't want to change with the times because when he was first out in 92, it was mostly print was the source, print and radio. We know today is mostly digital and multimedia. Everything's video now and everything's audio. There's no physical cassettes or CDs or DVDs anymore. Everything is digital. So he doesn't seem to mind that. And he kind of, well, he stated that these guys aren't real journalists. But when they confronted him about journalism, he said he didn't go to school, but he had the experience. But it's very hypocritical to say that, because most of these people with platforms like a Joe Budden, Cam and Mace, they have they've been artists their whole life, so they transition to media. And he even brung up athletes. They brung up athletes. Rory and Mal did, and they said that athletes transition to broadcasting and being analysts. And he said, well, that's an easy transition, because they was making reference to Shannon Sharp. And he said, that's an easy transition. Well, I was like, well, it's an easy transition to talk about sports and music, because if you put out music, you know firsthand knowledge what it takes to make an album. You know the process of contracts and things like that. You have firsthand knowledge. Elliot Wilson came from high school and I believe community college, so he didn't necessarily have a musical background. So these guys would have more credibility than him to say these things. But like I said, it's just pure hatred and envy for the game. And he made comments about Cameron thinking he's being Stephen A. Smith now. He said the It Is What It Is show is cringeworthy, which is far from the truth. It's a very entertaining show. One of my favorite shows to watch, and it's not just a podcast. They actually have a production company. So they went up and above a podcast. They actually put resources into their sports show. But like I said, it's all hatred, but I can't wait to hear the response, probably tomorrow, hopefully, from Cameron and Mace, because, they're going to go all out. They're not going to pull any punches as far as Elliot Wilson goes, because like I said, you called our name out. We didn't ask for you. You called out for us, and then now you want attention. They're going to give him the attention that he needs. So it's going to be very exciting to see that. And like I said, everything in the interview was kind of hypocritical, because he talked about Kai Cenat and he talked about Cam and Mace, thinking he's Stephen A. Smith and things like this. But you never called out Joe Budden. You never called out Shannon Sharp, really. You didn't call out any of the people who started off as other things. Even academics. Academics has a DJ background, but he's considered a journalist, but he didn't go to school for it either. But you didn't call out these guys. You just picked out specific people that you didn't like, because, they had resources. And he kind of talked about how Cam and Mace has these connections with the industry, and he gets these interviews that he doesn't get. But who was to say that they ever wanted to talk to Elliot Wilson in the first place? Maybe they like Cameron and Mace better, and they felt comfortable on their platform. Elliot Wilson is an older guy, so it comes off as a different energy. But you got to realize that everything you've done in the past doesn't guarantee anything in the future. You're only thing you're guaranteed is what you're guaranteed now. So everything he's talking about he did in the past doesn't matter now. Nobody knows about it in this generation, unless they go back and research it. But like I said, this generation doesn't do that. You have to be able to evolve and surround yourself with people that'll put you in a different light. You have to reintroduce yourself. It looks like he's not willing to reintroduce himself, and he just want to go off what he's already done. But nevertheless, he needs to evolve for the times and realize that it's a new day. So, that's all I have. Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. And until next time, I'll see you next time.